So if you do psychoanalysis, then Freud would argue that you are able to differentiate the right from wrong behavior and then choose the right behavior, and it is no longer causing you conflict. In the process of doing psychoanalysis, Freud's disciples, he had many of them, but the key ones are another psychoanalyst called Alfred Adler, Adler. He was actually the president and sometimes secretary of the Psychoanalytic Society, began to disagree with Freud. And he says, well, the individual is not shaped by only his id, ego, and superego, that there are other forces that shape the individual. He says, based on his own experience, Alfred Adler was what you call a brilliant student. He was what you might call a student through elementary school, secondary school, University of Vienna, and medical studies. He was usually the top student. He says, as he looks at himself and look at people around him, they all qualify for the term neurosis. So you would call him neurotic. Freud himself is neurotic. But at any rate, he says the forces motivating him, or the neurotic, is not what Freud had articulated. The forces motivating neurotic, according to him, is a little more simpler than that. He says, we human beings are born. We're helpless, powerless. We depend on our parents or significant others, on other people to survive. He says, the child at some point learns about his helplessness, the fact that other people are needed for him to survive. All of us then, according to Alfred Adler, Dr. Adler, at some point become aware of our inferiority. Inferiority vis-a-vis the world we live in. The physical environment can snuff us out at any moment. I'm sure you know that. Regardless of what you think about yourself, if there is a tsunami, earthquake, flood, drought, all number of physical things, including diseases, can snuff out the individual's life, whether he likes it or not. That's just the way it is. So Adler then says, these forces of the natural environment combined with how the individual feels about his body. Some individuals, according to him, inherited medical issues that compound their sense of inferiority. A child may have inherited a medical problem that makes him feel weak, unable to compete with other children, and this adds to his general inferiority. So Adler then says, we have a situation where children all develop a sense of inferiority, but these are in degrees. Those who develop too much of it are those, he says, compensate, try to act the opposite of it. That is, we feel inferior due to our powerlessness over the environment. Then we try to feel the opposite of it, what he calls superiority. But we also know that nobody is powerful, not that much powerful. You may tell yourself you're powerful, but you are not really powerful. There are many people in your world that can beat you up, even kill you, and you know that. So the individual then is not that powerful, but in his mind, according to Adler, he compensates or he tries to overcome his sense of weakness, powerlessness, by an assumption that he's powerful, the assumption of superiority. Then he behaves as if, in fact, he is powerful, but he is not. So the desire to be powerful, the desire for superiority is an act, it's make-believe. But we, according to Adler, do it because it is survival-oriented to make that assumption, but it is not true. But so he says then that the neurotic child like himself is a child that has a lot of compensation. Consider him, as I said before, he was an excellent student. He says, because that was the only way he could feel powerful in his world. Otherwise, he had medical problems that made him feel inferior. But by studying very hard and being the top of his class, he developed a sense of power, if you like, superiority to other kids. As long as he made A's in his school, he felt superior to other kids. The other kids may do well in sports, soccer, everything, which he could not. But now he could do very well in academics. And that, he said, is what the neurotic is. That the neurotic is a person, let me repeat, who feels inadequate, powerless, inferior, and compensates with a drive to be superior. He's not in reality, but he behaves as if he is superior to other people. As you can see, anybody who goes about behaving as if he is superior to other people is going to have lots and lots of social problems. Somewhere in our lectures, I will talk about how he creates problems for other people, for one and other people. But now we're just trying to understand the self. So we have articulated that Adler says that inferiority and superiority are the key factors in the child's self-formation. Normal people are not necessarily aware of their sense of inferiority and superiority. They're not aware of it, but it is there. If you push a normal person, degrade him, call him, put down names, you will realize that even though he doesn't talk about it, he can attack you because he also has a need to feel superior. But so a normal person is a neurotic who is not conscious of desiring, feeling inferior and desiring superiority. So then Adler said that the way to heal neurosis is not as Freud was saying. So he left the psychoanalysis group of Vienna, Austria, and formed his own psychoanalytic group. And what he did was to get parents to bring their children, and he and his psychologists will observe their behavior and obviously ascertain the ones that are normal and the ones that are neurotic. If they are neurotic, as I've indicated, they're trying to be superior to everybody. At school, they try to be the best students, whatever they do, and then they have all kinds of problems. If you are motivated to try to be superior, obviously you are not. You're going to have fear of not being superior. You know that from your own experience. You're going to have anxiety. You're going to have all kinds of issues. So Adler then began to do psychoanalysis for children. Doesn't matter what their age is. By the way, if you're a teacher, much of what you call school psychology is based on Alfred Adler's psychoanalysis, or as he called it, individual psychology. Teachers deal with children, particularly in elementary and secondary school. So they observe children, they can see their behavior, and mostly they're looking at the way they interact with other kids, and they use quite a bit of Adlerian psychology in dealing with students. So if you study school psychology, or as it is called these days, educational psychology, you will know quite a bit about Adlerian psychology. Okay, so we have talked about Sigmund Freud. We have talked about Alfred Adler. There's another guy called Carl Jung, Jung. Carl Jung is a psychoanalyst, a psychiatrist from Switzerland, who became part of the Freudian group. So Freud, Adler, and Carl Jung were if you like, the three key members of psychoanalysis. So Carl Jung says, okay, Freud, you're right, Adler, you're right, but I think human beings are a little more than that. There are aspects of human beings that go beyond what you guys have talked about. If you remember, psychoanalysis began towards the 1890s, basically in the early part of the 20th century. And the psychoanalysts were trying to use pure scientific criteria in understanding people. They weren't trying to use religion because they think religion is based on belief. So they discarded religion. They were trying to use pure reason, pure empirical evidence to try to understand people. So they were scientists. So Carl Jung says, I know what you're doing, and I do it. He's a psychiatrist. But I think people are a little more than that. People, he argued, have a spiritual element to them, that they may not be aware of it, but it is part of who they are. And that, he says, we have to figure out how the spiritual element in people play a role in how they define themselves. How did I, Uzodi, come to have my self-concept, my self-image? He says, yes, what Freud and Adler said are true, but I also have a spiritual element in me or in you that play a role in this whole idea. This is what I have for you today.